this lesson, we will cover 5 elements to critical thinking. Number 1, letting go of personal biases. Number 2, sorting out conflicting claims. Number 3, weighing the evidence. Number 4, arriving at reasonable conclusions. And number 5, asking searching questions. So let's begin by examining how to let go of personal bias. We all see the world uniquely due to our personal set of paradigms, which means our belief to how things are. Our paradigms are shaped from our past experiences, our assumptions about human behavior, our expectations, our prior knowledge, and our personal moods. Your belief window is the lens or window pane through which we view the world. Religion, ethnicity, citizenship, and even gender make up our belief window and thus affect how we interpret life. Concerning our paradigms, Stephen R. Covey has stated in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that each of us tends to think we see things as they are, that we are objective, but this is not the case. We see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it. When we open our mouths to describe what we see, we in effect describe ourselves, our perceptions, our paradigms. So how do you know if you have a correct paradigm? In the April 2011 General Conference, Dallin H. Oaks said, "As mortal beings, we have some basic physical needs. Desires to satisfy these needs compel our choices, and choices determine our actions. The desires we act on determine our changing, achieving, and our becoming." Consider your own paradigms. Which are keeping you from seeing things clearly or thinking critically? Your needs like self-esteem, love and belonging, your safety needs, and your physiological needs. Depending on if your needs are met determines the desires you have, which then affects your choices, your actions, and your final results. Measuring your final results takes time. If you see that your behavior is not meeting your needs, take time to re-examine your belief window. Chances are that there is an incorrect principle on your belief window, and that is preventing you from meeting your needs. Now let's examine the second step to critical thinking, which is to sort out conflicting claims. How are we supposed to sort out conflicting claims? You can do so by testing the validity of a claim. First, look for the assumptions, the assertions implied by that viewpoint, and then see if you can find any exceptions to those assumptions. An essential element to sorting out conflicting claims is being able to recognize fallacies in logic or reasoning. While there are hundreds of fallacies, here are just a few examples of logical fallacies in thinking that you will want to avoid if you are to become an effective critical thinker. The first fallacy is hasty generalization. This is when someone is making assumptions about a whole group or range of cases based on a sample that is inadequate, usually because it is atypical or too small. Here are a few examples of this. Jana has been to San Diego several times, and the sky was always blue and the temperature ideal. The weather must be perfect in San Diego all the time. Here's another example. Tina bought a used camera while she was in Portland and got a great deal. Portland must be a good place to buy used cameras. Another commonly used fallacy is proof by lack of evidence. This is when someone claims something is true simply because it hasn't been proven wrong. If someone was using this fallacy, they might say, "My professor didn't say anything good about my paper, so she must have hated it." Another example of this would be, "Nobody has ever proved to me there's a God, so I know there is no God." Next is the either-or fallacy. This is where someone asserts that we must choose between two things, when in fact we really have more alternatives. Some examples of these are, either you're with us or against us, or either we ban boxing or hundreds of young men will be senselessly killed. Appealing to false authority is a fallacy that is often used. This is when you base your claim on the authority of someone who might or might not be an authority on the topic. You are relying on the appearance of authority rather than the real evidence to make your argument. A few examples of these are, "My grandpa hates tomatoes, therefore tomatoes don't taste good." Or, 4 out of 5 dentists recommends Crest, therefore Crest must be the best toothpaste for everyone to buy. Besides becoming aware of our fallacies and our thinking, it is also important to determine whether the source is reliable before you trust it. Here are a few questions that you should ask. How current is the information? Who is the publisher? Who is the intended audience? What is the experience or education of the author? Or what kind of sources are being cited? Also know, when it comes to the domain of a website, that some domains are more credible than others. Domains are what ends as .edu or .gov. These are genuinely more reliable. First, whenever we are faced with the problem, it is important to define what the problem is. Problems can be broken down into three main structures: well, moderate, and ill-structured problems. Well-structured problems are problems that use a step-by-step process, rule, formula, equation, or algorithm to be solved. The solution is usually predictable, and typically there is just one right answer. Algebra, chemistry, or physics problems are examples of these. Moderately structured problems are those that require varying strategies and adaptations to fit particular contexts. Often, there's more than one acceptable answer. Examples of these are designing spreadsheets, writing a letter, and planning a sales call. Ill-constructed problems are those with multiple perspectives, goals, and solutions. There is no single, well-defined and agreed-upon solution, and may not be a fully satisfactory solution at all. Art, architecture, and web design would fall under these categories. After defining the problem, it is important to identify what challenges, goals, and opportunities that the problem presents. Note that when faced with problems, you usually have two reactions. We either see that challenge as an opportunity, or we see it as an uncomfortable defeat, and therefore try to avoid the problem. So how do we see our problem as a challenge or opportunity instead of an avoidance? The difference is our experience. As we gain experience, our past problems, whether positive or negative, will determine how we feel about future problems. The third and fourth steps to critical thinking are weighing the evidence and arriving at reasonable conclusions. We will discuss these together as we use a problem-solving and decision-making model to guide us through these steps. Once the problem has been defined, one must gather information such as facts and data regarding the problem. Who are the vested stakeholders? Are there any boundaries or challenges? Next, develop alternatives by brainstorming and being open to all possibilities. With developing alternatives, one should try to identify important criteria for weighing the alternatives or identifying advantages and constraints to each alternative. Next, weigh the alternatives by evaluating and prioritizing them. Then select the best alternative based on whether it's suitable, feasible, and flexible. Once a solution has been implemented, one should monitor the progress of the chosen solution. If the results do not meet the expectations of the solution, then reconsider alternative solution implemented. In the end, it's important to step back, review, and learn from your experience. The final element to critical thinking is asking searching questions. In the book, The Role of Question and Teaching, Thinking and Learning, it states, "Only students who have questions are really thinking and learning. It is possible to give students an examination on any subject by just asking them to list all of the questions that they have about a subject." One way we can go about asking questions is by using Bloom's taxonomy of questioning to evaluate our learning level at each of the following stages. The first level in which we must learn is at the knowledge level. This is where we must simply be able to remember and recall the information by being able to quote and cite lists or definitions. The second level of learning requires that we must demonstrate an understanding. Here we must show that we comprehend by being able to explain concepts in our own words. The third level of learning, being able to apply information learned to solve new problems. The fourth level of learning is being able to break complex ideas apart to examine various components. The fifth level of Bloom's taxonomy entails being able to synthesize or combine information with other concepts. Finally, at level 6, one must be able to evaluate or judge the idea based on its worth, validity, accuracy, or relevance. Another way to use questions to think critically is when solving problems. When looking to solve a problem, start at the end result and work backwards toward the root cause, continually asking, why? This will need to be repeated over and over until the root cause of the problem becomes apparent. Here is an example. Problem. I don't have enough money for tuition next semester. Why? Because I went out to eat too much this semester. Why? Because my roommates always persuade me to go out and eat with them. Why? Because I'm easily persuaded. Additionally, there are some good questions to ask yourself when approaching a problem. They are, what type of problem is this? What units should the answer be in? What concepts do I need to know to solve it? What formula or formulas do I use to solve the problem? And then solve the problem and ask yourself if your answer is reasonable. One final way to use questions to think critically is to ask questions about the material you are exposed to. By using the interrogative words who, what, when, where, why, and how, you can often determine the most relative concepts in the material. It is also important to remember that a declarative statement is an answer to a question. So as you come across these ideas, whether you're reading or as presented in class, ask yourself, what question does this statement answer? I hope that you will now decide to actively use good thinking skills, and always remember that encountering a problem is just an opportunity to learn.